My name is Millie. I've been married for 5 years, and suddenly my mother-in-law fell ill. It's hard for her to even stand up, and basically, I had to quit my job to care for her full-time. Lately, my husband John has been coming home late because he says he's busy at work, and I can't rely on him. Just when I was wondering what to do, one day he came home with a divorce paper. "Millie, please divorce me." "What are you talking about? You come home early for the first time in a while and this is what you say?" "Your mom just fell asleep, and I don't want to hear this, not even as a joke." "This isn't a joke. I'm serious. I really want to divorce you. So look, I've even filled out the divorce papers. All you have to do is sign them." "Wait a minute, you did this without even hearing my opinion? What's going on in your head? Weren't we a couple?" "Yes, we are. That's why we can't split without signing the divorce papers." No, that's not what I mean. Couples are supposed to discuss and decide together. If everything was going to be done unilaterally, there was no point in becoming a couple. I really regret it too. If I had met Michelle sooner, none of this would have happened. Then, you wouldn't have had to get a divorce. Well, if it weren't for marrying me, you probably wouldn't have been able to marry anyone else. Who wants to marry someone without parents, right? Are you saying I should be grateful I ever married someone like you? You can take it however you want, but yeah, that's the gist of it. Marriage was fun, wasn't it? For someone who's never had parents, I showed you what it's like to have them. Yeah, the first 2 or 3 years were fun. John used to come home early. Now he's incredibly late, and he's not even around on the weekends. That makes sense. I have a wonderful girlfriend, Michelle. I can't wait to get married to her, so just write your name on the divorce papers without complaining. I think it's going to be really tough for you without my income, but good luck. You bring divorce papers and then offer unwanted sympathy? Just get out of here. What if your mother wakes up? She won't wake up. Even if she does, she can't do anything. Just ignore her. She doesn't earn a penny but costs a lot, what with hospital bills and diapers. It can't be helped. Your mom didn't choose to be like this. All our family can do is support her. And yet, you've never even taken care of her once. That's because it's a hassle. I felt sick just the one time I was asked to watch her. Why should I have to take off work for someone who can't do anything for themselves? I'm not a kid, she should take care of herself, so I just left her alone. That's terrible. Even though when you were a child, your mom did so much for you. And now that she needs support, you just abandon her. Well, it's common sense for parents to take care of their children when they're born. But it's not my duty to take care of my parents. I should have just ignored her selfish desires and put her in a nursing home. You wanted to respect her wish to live in this house left by your father. I didn't know you had such a cold heart. I get it now, I'll agree to the divorce. Are you happy now? I thought you'd put up more of a fight. This isn't fun at all. I wanted it to be like those dramatic battles you see on TV. If I knew you were this boring, I would have divorced you sooner. With everything set up like this, even if I said no, it wouldn't change the outcome. So, resisting is pointless. I've wanted to get rid of someone like you for a while now. Someone who claims they're just working late or out for business but is really cheating? I can't deal with that. And this Michelle person you want to marry, you'll probably just repeat the same pattern with her. Too bad. Michelle is nothing like you. She's an entrepreneur, a real catch. Not someone who quit her job to care for an old woman. You think I'd divorce someone as amazing as her? Ah, so you choose your partners based on money, after all. Of course. That's what marriage is all about. When you remarry Michelle, she's going to take care of your mother, right? No way. I can't make Michelle do such dirty work. So, what about your mother? What about her wish to stay in this house? Shut up, don't worry about it. Just leave the old lady alone. Eventually. You can't be serious. How can you say such things so casually? Yeah, I don't want to hear your preaching now. We're not planning to come back to this house after we remarry. So where are you going to go? What about your stuff? It doesn't matter. Michelle's buying me stuff. She owns a big apartment, so I'll just move in there. Just miss me, who will be living with a 23-year-old entrepreneur beauty. Oh, and tell the old hag not to bother us.
Wait, just wait a minute. The conversation isn't over. That's how it is. So, just fill out the divorce papers quickly and submit them.
John stormed out of the bedroom and seems to have left the house. As the door slammed shut, the mother-in-law, who was supposed to be asleep, woke up. Should we buy out that woman's company? But, are you sure? He will be my ex-husband, but for you, he's still. It's okay, don't worry about it. I can't even think of such a selfish person as my child. Besides, once you divorce John, we won't be mother and daughter anymore, right? We've been like that, but from now on, call me Claire. What? Are you sure? It's fine, let's get closer and work together more from now on. While saying this, Claire, my mother-in-law, reached out for a handshake. I grasped her hand, pledging to do my best from now on. 2 months later, while I was at home, John suddenly stormed in with a young woman.
Hey! What the hell are you guys doing?
What? Why are you here all of a sudden? You said you didn't need this house anymore. And you start yelling as soon as you enter, isn't that weird? This isn't your house anymore, don't just walk in like that. If you're not leaving, shall I call the police? Still want to argue?
Don't mess with me. You guys set us up, right? And yet you act as if you have nothing to do with this. I'm not leaving until you take responsibility for this.
It's no use, he doesn't seem to understand. Millie, could you call the police? It doesn't look like talking will resolve anything. We might need to involve the police. Understood. I'll call them now.
Wait a minute. Don't just go ahead with your own story. What do you mean my mom bought Michelle's company? What was she thinking? Why did she buy it in the first place?
Why? Because it seemed useful for our business, that's why. And Michelle was happy to make the deal.
She wasn't happy at all. She accepted much less than what we offered. It was a field that could still grow. Being bought at such a price is just too much.
What now? We both agreed on the price. You've even signed the contract, so complaining about it now is pointless. Besides, at first, you were happy that someone was taking over your company. You even reached out to shake my hand saying you were grateful. That was before I knew you were John's mother. So what? You're saying you came to complain because you found out I'm John's mother? That's hardly businesslike. It's not constructive at all. Do you think you can run a business successfully just with your emotions? Well, maybe that's why you haven't achieved much.
And why are you still so lively? When I divorced Millie, you were on your deathbed. Could it be you were deceiving me?
Deceiving you? Don't say such horrible things. I was just testing to see how you would react. Then you told Millie to just leave me be, right? So I decided then not to consider you my son anymore. Even so, there's no need to go this far. To take the company from Michelle at such a price and act like nothing's wrong. What kind of business are you even doing, taking over Michelle's company? I didn't even know you were that wealthy. Do I really need to go around saying I have a lot of money? And you asked about our business. Millie and I are running an online shopping site. Michelle's company was mainly involved in wholesale and developing their own cosmetics, right? So we bought it to secure the supply chain for our business. Thanks to that, our business is thriving. It's a mystery why it was struggling so much under her.
That was just bad luck. If I still owned that company, it would have been much more profitable. It was a company poised for growth. It's only doing so poorly because you took it from me.
That's a terrible way to talk. I've been running your company carefully, you know? And you said wholesale, but your selling platform was just a flea market app. You should have either launched your own online shopping site or listed on a different one. That was because it costs money to do that. A flea market app is free to list, and we only pay a commission when something sells. That's why you didn't make much profit, because you think like that. If it costs money, you should have studied and tried to do it yourself. It's because you avoid that kind of effort that your company was on the brink of bankruptcy. What? On the brink of bankruptcy? You told me it was making a ton of money. Right, Michelle? Were you deceiving me too, even after we got divorced?
I don't know anything about that. Who goes around telling people they're about to go bankrupt? If anyone does, they're clearly not cut out for business.
Okay, can you have your marital argument at home? I don't think it's something to be aired in front of others. Besides, we have a meeting coming up, so if you don't leave soon, people will start arriving.
What? You actually have employees? Don't get too cocky. You probably just gathered a bunch of useless people. A mob like that can just wait outside. Our discussion comes first.
I will not tolerate you insulting me, but insulting my employees is even less acceptable. Why are you taking this seriously? They're just people you picked up with money, right? Are you saying they are more important than discussing things with Michelle and me? Of course, they are. They are precious people who have chosen to follow Millie and me.
There's no way you have such people. Don't make stuff up. Competent people wouldn't join your company. Don't get ahead of yourself.
There are plenty of capable people who can't work in certain environments. The people who work for us are all single mothers. Some have young children and can't work elsewhere, or they have health issues that prevent them from working. These are the people who make up our company. Calling them useless is like giving your own introduction. You might want to think a bit more before you speak, it might help you later in life. What, so you're picking up poor single mothers and acting all noble about it? Typical of someone who deceived me. Do you crave praise that much? If so, just do it on your own. Anyway, give Michelle back the management of her company now. Or, if not, pay the difference between what you paid and its current market value since it's not enough. What? Why would I do that? The contract has already been signed a long time ago, and it's not possible to return it or change the amount now. You deceived Michelle and you're still saying that? We're the ones suffering because of you. Don't you feel even a little bit sorry? Why should I feel sorry for you? You were married to Millie and you betrayed her. Cheating is something the worst kind of people do. And Michelle knew you were married, didn't she? Don't you think you might be straying from the moral path? What? Why should we think like that? Isn't there a reason people get cheated on? If I'm going to be with someone forever, I prefer someone better. Just that simple. I don't think I did anything wrong. Oh, is that so? Then this conversation is over. Go home? I don't ever want to see your face again. Someone like you is just baggage.
You. I kept quiet because I thought I had to listen to my parent. Who wants to be with a woman who can't even have kids? Plus, you're already 29? Getting pregnant, giving birth, raising a child from there is impossible.
That statement is so ignorant, or rather, thoughtless. I've said I don't want to talk to someone who says things like that, right? Please leave. I don't want to breathe the same air as you for another moment. Also, have you forgotten what you said when you handed Millie the divorce papers? You said you didn't need her anymore because you were marrying a young entrepreneur. You treated me as baggage too, didn't you? Stick to your beliefs, then. Oh, and it turned out Michelle's company was heavily in debt.
If you'd just pay the market value, we could pay off some of the debt. Even if we can't give Michelle her company back, we should be able to start a new one.
Oh, I think it's better if you just give up.
Why? Why do I have to listen to your constant complaints? The rest is a problem between me and Michelle.
Yes, that might be true. But remember I said the contract has been finalized? However, the registration hasn't been changed yet, so the manager is still officially Michelle. What? Then just revert it back to her. Why did you say it can't be reverted? Were you trying to deceive me again? No, that's not it. Even if it was reverted, it would be pointless, that's why I said that. What? What do you mean? Look, Michelle. Just because you don't have the capability to develop original products doesn't mean you can resort to copying. Huh? Copying? What was she copying? The company name or something? No, it was more blatant copying. I had a look at all the products you developed. It turns out you made a lot of products that were very similar to department store cosmetics. But while the ingredients and pigmentation were completely different, the packaging was almost identical to department store brands. You even used disguised names to sell them as if they were department store cosmetics. What were you thinking doing that? You thought it wouldn't be noticed? Everyone just buys department store cosmetics for the packaging and the name anyway. I thought maybe they'd forgive the lesser quality since it's still labeled as department store cosmetics. Look, that's incredibly short-sighted and you're underestimating the consumers. Sure, there might be products that sell just because they're labeled as department store cosmetics. But more importantly, there's a reason why those brands are called department store cosmetics and why they're loved. If you ignore all that and just focus on your own profits, of course your business is going to suffer. Also, have you ever searched your company's name online to see what people are saying about it? Searched online? No way. You're that young and you don't know about searching yourself online? You never even thought about what kind of reviews your company might be getting? I just thought as long as money was coming in, it must be okay. That's why you didn't even realize your company's reviews are terrible. Just so you know, the reviews for your company are truly awful. That's why its market value has plummeted. So the amount I paid you is fair, actually more than fair. You should be thankful I even bought a company that was about to go bankrupt.
Don't be so arrogant. So what if I copied? People still bought it, didn't they? Enough with your nagging.
You're the one who needs to stop. Copying is seriously not okay. Especially with this product, you just slapped a department store brand name sticker on the packaging. That alone is a serious offense. It's a clear violation of trademark rights. The company needs to take full responsibility. Well, who else is gonna take it but you guys? The company is yours now, right? You're trying to disgrace Michelle and you end up eating your own words. Did you forget what I said earlier? The registration is still in Michelle's name. So what? You own it now, so Michelle has nothing to do with it. It's not unrelated at all. Oh. I didn't think you were that clueless. The fact that the registration hasn't been changed means the representative is still officially Michelle. If this issue goes public, Michelle as the representative will have to take responsibility. There might even be payments for damages because of the sales made so far. What are we going to do now? There's nothing to do but make Michelle take responsibility. She exploited consumers' desire for cheap, good products and it's not going to just go away for free. She has to take responsibility properly, as an adult and as a manager. Wait a minute. So you're saying Michelle is going to take on even more debt now? Yes, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's entirely her own responsibility.
Damn it! Michelle, how much do you need to deceive me before you're satisfied? You kept quiet about the company almost going bankrupt, and now you're going to take on more debt. This is not a joke. I can't deal with you anymore. I'm going back to Millie.
That's horrible. You're saying you're going to dump me.
Of course. Do you think I can keep going with a liar like you? Hey, Millie, let's start over. From now on, I'm all about you.
I think you're joking. Why would you think we can get back together? Why? Because, you still love me, right? I'm done with Michelle. I'll come back to you and we'll protect the company together. See, everything will be back to how it was. Why are you saying such things so easily? I don't need someone like you. Neither do we as a company.
But I'm your son, right? If something happens to you, then there won't be anyone to take over the company. It's definitely best if I come back.
Unfortunately, you are not my son. Therefore, you have no right to inherit this company. Of course, that goes for the property too. What? No, wait. That can't be right. You're still my mother. Just because I divorced Millie doesn't mean the parent-child relationship is severed. I was planning to tell you when I got older, but you are not my son. Your real mother was your father's mistress. You and I have no connection, we are just strangers. But we're both type A. Most people are type A, so it's not unusual if it matched. By that logic, does every type A in the world have a connection? Anyway, if you can't believe it, shall we do a DNA test? I'm telling you we're not parent and child. But why did you raise me, the child of my father's mistress? That's because I couldn't have children. When I found out, your father's mistress had just given birth. I was devastated when I learned I couldn't get pregnant myself. Moreover, she disappeared soon after giving birth to you. She said she wasn't confident. So, I took you in as my own child. Of course, I intended to legally adopt you. But your father said it wasn't necessary. What? Why would that be? That's ridiculous. You decided not to adopt me on your own, didn't you? No, it's different. John insisted he would never make you his child because you were his and his mistress's child. So, I had no choice but to raise you as someone else. That itself is proof of how much your father disliked me. He probably didn't want to leave me any inheritance either. But he passed away before he could arrange that, so we ended up receiving his estate together, didn't we? If I'm not your child, then where does your inheritance go? Don't worry about that. I've adopted Millie. What? Wait a minute. How come? Why are you calling her by name now when you used to call her your daughter-in-law? I told her to do that. We've adopted each other and become closer. Plus, I was infertile and felt strange being called mom. I'd rather we were like friends.
So what? You didn't adopt me, but you did Millie? That's ridiculous. I've been with you longer than she has. She just looked after you briefly when she married me. What do you mean by briefly? Are you referring to when she quit her job to take care of me full-time? Helping with meals and house chores? Struggling alone with my baths and the bathroom? If you call that briefly, then you try doing it. I'm a man, so that kind of thing is a bit. Oh, so you say. If you're a man, then stop clinging to us miserably. You chose to leave Millie for Michelle, so take responsibility. Shut up. Who's the one who pretended to be sick to deceive me? You knew this would happen, didn't you? That's the lowest. I was truly ill. I gradually got better, and now I'm completely healthy. During that time, Millie really did struggle to take care of me. I've made Millie my daughter. So I definitely won't leave you any inheritance. Just get out. Damn it! I'm a man. I can force you to listen. You'll regret acting so high and mighty.
At that moment, the front door burst open and a squad of police officers rushed in, restraining John and Michelle.
What? Why are the police here? Millie and Mom weren't even using their phones.
I had someone on standby in case you caused any trouble. They must have sensed something was wrong and called them. Oh, thank goodness. Looks like we can settle this before anything dangerous happens. Please, officer, take care of it.
Wait. Hold on. Listen to me.
John's pleas were ignored as he was taken away by the police. He was later questioned for illegal entry and agreed never to approach us again as part of a settlement. It's surprising, though, that Michelle was pregnant. She said she was with John all the time, so it must be his. With the lawsuit for copying products and now owing damages, things are going to get even tougher for her. Also, according to the person who was following him, John got demoted at his company. It seems it's because the news of our terrible split spread, and he kept making mistakes. Still, Michelle has no choice but to cling to John. After all, he's the father of the child she's carrying, and she's broke and in debt. If only she had kept some of the money from selling the company, things might have been different. If she were capable of that, she wouldn't have done such things in the first place. By the way, has John tried contacting Millie at all? Oh, yes, he sends messages almost every day asking for help. I ignore all of them, though. That's best. There's no need to bother with someone like him. It's his own fault he ended up this way. We don't need to care about him. Plus, we're planning to move soon, so we can completely cut ties with John.
Thanks to the good reviews spreading, more people want to work with us now. Let's keep working hard together.
Thus, I feel happy being able to have tea with Claire. Claire, who couldn't have children, and me, abandoned by my biological mother. We plan to continue supporting each other and living our lives together. We're gonna build a house for 2 families. Wait, what? Where's the money for that? Huh? Obviously, it's gonna come from your savings. I was taken aback when my husband suddenly informed me that we'd be living with his parents. Now I understood why he'd been so dismissive. Trying to hide my shock, he continued. If you really hate the idea, we can just get divorced.
Fine. I'll divorce you.
I couldn't stand him having his way any longer. Besides, there's no way I'd divorce him for free. He's gonna pay for this. And just as he wanted, we're gonna get divorced.
What the heck did you do? Who knows? Maybe it's just your past catching up to you.
My husband would soon regret his actions, crying over them. And he'd end up losing everything. My name's Catherine, and I'm currently a homemaker. I met my husband, Bob, through my previous job. More accurately, he was introduced to me by my boss at the time. This boss happened to be a college senior of mine, and we've been close since our university days. Got some time today?
Yes, I do, but what?
Actually, I've got someone I want to introduce you to.
Someone you want to introduce?
Even if he was my boss, I found it a bit bothersome. I wanted to go home early and watch a recorded show. But I couldn't simply turn down an invitation from my boss. Well, he's a good guy, don't worry.
Just for a bit, okay?
Though my first impression of Bob wasn't the best, as we talked, we found we had similar interests. Plus, it was nice not having to be on guard around him. Things progressed quite quickly after that. Will you marry me?
You're proposing already?
Huh? Sorry. I was just taken aback.
So, what's your answer?
Bob proposed to me only 3 months into our relationship. Though I was so surprised I made a snarky comment, of course, my answer was a yes. But once we're married, I'd like you to be a homemaker, okay?
Sure. That sounds good.
I accepted Bob's proposal. I always had the idea of being a homemaker, and I wanted to fulfill Bob's wishes as much as I could. Being a homemaker turned out to be quite a challenge for me every day. You seem tired.
Being a homemaker turned out to be quite a challenge for me every day.
What do you mean?
I thought I'd have more free time.
Bob just laughed.
You'll get used to it eventually. I'll help out till then.
Thank you. That really helps. Honestly, I was grateful for his suggestion. Cleaning, laundry, and other chores weren't my forte, so it always took me a while. Bob never complained about my lack of skill. There were moments when I felt truly grateful to have married him. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. It didn't work out again.
You tried so hard, too. But there'll be a next time.
Suddenly, Bob's face changed and he raised his voice.
What do you know, Catherine?
I thought he brought it up, but I held my tongue. Bob works in sales, but apparently, he hasn't been doing well. At that time, I never imagined things would turn out this way.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. My bad. I shouldn't have reacted like that.
Even though he apologized, I could see the frustration on his face. In situations like this, I try to think of the right words to say, but I just can't find them. I worried that if I said something else now, it might further upset my husband. Then one day. How was work?
Well, I wasn't feeling well, so I took the day off.
Oh, okay. Although he said he was feeling sick, he didn't seem to be. He ate his breakfast as usual, and even had seconds when it came to the bread. I had my doubts but didn't think much of it at the time. From that day on, whenever I said something to Bob, he took it as a complaint and got upset. How are you feeling now?
Yeah. I'm feeling better. I'm gonna take a short walk.
Huh? You haven't rested yet.
It's okay. I won't go far.
But Bob's expression changed. I sensed trouble, but it was too late.
What now? Got something else to complain about?
It's not like that.
Then just leave it, okay? Instead of fussing over me, focus on the house.
Okay. I felt even more deflated. People say marriage can change a person, but with Bob, it was like he became someone else entirely. Life went on like this, and years passed. Lately, all I thought about was how not to upset Bob. I'll be home late tonight.
Got it. What about dinner?
I plan on eating when I get home. That day, I waited and waited for my husband to come home. The clock struck 11 p.m., and he was still not back. I'm home. It was just about to turn midnight. Relieved he was finally back, I greeted him with a smile. Welcome back. There's dinner if you want. Nah, I already ate out. Huh? What?
Well, you said you'd eat at home today.
Oh, did I? Must have slipped my mind. I stood frozen at the entrance. I had prepared dinner and waited without eating, just for him. Without a single apology from Bob, my distrust grew. Am I really loved? Then, one day after such days passed.
Here you go.
Bob came home holding a bouquet of flowers. They were red roses, my favorite. What's the occasion?
What are you talking about? It's Catherine's birthday, isn't it?
Oh. With everything going on lately, I had completely forgotten about my own birthday.
I got wine and cake too. Let's celebrate.
Yes. I didn't expect a surprise, but I was genuinely delighted. That's when I truly felt loved by Bob. We enjoyed a peaceful atmosphere that day, something we hadn't felt in a long time. I wished those moments would last forever, but they didn't.
About next month's payments.
Huh? Next month? Our happy times ended abruptly. I received money for monthly expenses, but it had noticeably decreased from the beginning. Until now, I had managed by cutting corners, but this time was different. I had my own savings, but I wanted to keep them for retirement.
The money you've been giving me isn't enough.
What?
It should be more than sufficient.
Have you been wasting it on something, Catherine?
I haven't.
I've been saving where I can.
You sure you're not just buying things you want?
Normally, I might have backed down at this point, but not this time. I wanted children, and considering our future, I believed we needed a serious discussion. I haven't been spending recklessly. It's been tough for months, especially since the amount you give has decreased. You're blaming me? Then where's the rest of the money going? Determined to stand my ground, I said my piece. But Bob, perhaps annoyed by my words, threw his smartphone at me. I instinctively shielded my face. It didn't hit me, but the phone's screen shattered.
If you're gonna complain so much, why don't you figure it out? That's why I'm talking to you about it.
Another factor exacerbating the issue was Bob's low salary. In his sales job at the company, a significant portion of his pay was incentive-based. The more contracts he secured, the more he earned. But if he couldn't secure contracts, his salary wouldn't increase. Given what he said, I decided to make a suggestion. Fine. I'll get a part-time job and bring in some money. That should solve it, right? But Bob didn't approve.
What are you talking about? Didn't you promise to be a homemaker when we got married? But it's getting tough to get by, you know? Even so, it's not okay. You're just gonna neglect household chores, right? I'm not talking about working full-time, though.
Feeling that if we didn't resolve this now, it would continue forever, I pressed on. I believed our discussion would ultimately benefit both of us. However, what Bob said next was beyond belief.
You wanting to work so much is suspicious. What? How do you figure that? I'm just thinking about our finances.
Seeing the conversation take a strange turn, I tried to steer it back, but Bob wasn't listening.
Catherine, do you have another man or something?
I felt like the trust we'd built over the years was crumbling. After always trying to keep the peace and accommodate Bob's moods, this was the last straw.
Fine. I won't work. You're happy now, right?
You should have said so sooner. By this time, my love for Bob had almost faded. He'd throw tantrums when things didn't go his way. Such a dominant attitude was too much. And then, after a certain incident, I decided to seek revenge. Just make sure to handle the payments somehow. I can't do much if I'm not working.
I get it. But Catherine, you should be more grateful to me.
There was a reason Bob was so insistent on me staying home. He wanted to feel like he was providing for the family. However, his ability to be the breadwinner was questionable at best, and he didn't even seem to understand that. Of course, I am grateful. No, you look down on me, don't you? Why would you think that? We can live because of your earnings. See? You do get it. Just be more careful from now on. What I said to Bob wasn't a lie, but dealing with his petty pride was exhausting for me. Honestly, such things seemed so trivial. I started to think that maybe Bob's work troubles were because of his attitude. And then, another problem surfaced.
I heard from Bob that you've been getting a bit too confident lately.
Excuse me? I was invited over by my in-laws, and the moment I stepped inside, I was confronted with this. If Bob hadn't said anything, it wouldn't have come to this. Moreover, they've always doted on their only son, Bob. So, whatever Bob did, they approved. Who do you think is earning for you?
You should be more grateful.
Seriously. I responded half-heartedly, finding the situation bothersome. That only added fuel to the fire with my in-laws.
What kind of response is that? Are you looking down on us? Honey, say something. Well, a wife should always listen to her husband, right?
Why don't you teach her, dear? That's a good idea. This was getting beyond tedious. Being involved with these two could throw one's life into chaos. I had thought they were kind people before the marriage, but I guess they just needed a trigger. Thanks to Bob tattling on me, it triggered them.
I apologize, but I have plans after this, so I'll be heading out.
I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could.
Oh, come on. You've got plenty of time, right? You're just a homemaker after all.
My in-laws gave me a nasty smile. No, I really don't have time today, so excuse me. With that, I made a hasty exit from their house. All the way home, my heart was racing. I had never felt this kind of emotion, almost like fear, before. But it wasn't over.
Welcome back.
Upon returning home, Bob was waiting at the door. Why are you waiting out here? You went to my parents' house, didn't you? Yeah, but I just got a call from my mom. She said you left in a hurry. I realized I had messed up. I had completely forgotten that Bob might contact my in-laws.
It's not like I ran away.
Then what's it about? I just had a place to go, that's all. I felt my excuse was a bit weak, but it seemed Bob didn't press the matter further. I sighed in relief, looking up at the ceiling. After that, Bob's domineering attitude lessened, and I enjoyed a momentary peace.
I feel like I have a fever, so I'm gonna take the day off again.
How high is it?
Maybe 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit?
All right, I'll get you some medicine. Thanks. He had been regularly going to work recently, but I was concerned that he was taking time off again. I finished my chores for the day and went to check on Bob, who was supposedly resting. When I reached out to empty the trash, I noticed something. There were discarded pills. He was pretending to take them and then throwing them away. I instinctively felt Bob was faking his illness. And then I remembered something. In times like this, he often said he was going for a walk and would leave the house. That's when I decided to set a trap for Bob. I'm going to run some errands and might be back a bit late.
Okay.
His reply didn't sound like someone who's sick. There was a noticeable energy in his voice. I pretended to leave, but waited in a spot where I could see the front door. Sure enough, about 15 minutes later, I saw Bob leaving the house. Where's he off to? I discreetly followed him and saw him enter a casino nearby. I quickly took out my phone and snapped a photo. It became clear to me that his frequent outings were all because of this. It's no wonder that the money he hands over every month for our expenses has been decreasing. And then, on a certain Saturday, Bob made a shocking statement. This became the catalyst for the upcoming incident. We're gonna build a house for 2 families. Wait, what? Where's the money for that? Huh? Obviously, it's gonna come from your savings. I was left speechless, being suddenly told about moving in with my in-laws. The reason he'd been increasingly disrespectful to me lately became clear. Bob continued, sensing my shock. I'm the head of this household. So, whatever I decide, you gotta follow. Is that so? What on earth is he talking about? The fact that he'd say such things as if they were totally normal, he's not impressive or anything of the sort. If you're not on board with it, we can just get a divorce.
Fine. Let's divorce.
I couldn't stand being manipulated by Bob any longer. And I wouldn't let him off the hook with just a divorce. Bob needs to be punished. Oh, and by the way, my parents are coming over soon. What? Right now? They'll be staying here until the house is built. Make sure you treat them well. With that, Bob hastily began preparing to leave. I couldn't believe how selfish he was being to leave at a time like this, but I saw it as a golden opportunity. I wanted to leave right away, but I thought it'd be satisfying to tell my in-laws about the divorce in person. I'll handle it. I saw off my husband leaving home and couldn't help but laugh. As I eagerly awaited the arrival of my in-laws, they were like, "Oh? Where's Bob?"
He left a bit ago. He told me to look after you too.
Could you help me with the bags?
Sure.
In the end, I found myself hauling each and every bag into the room, just as directed. While carrying the bags, a question pops into my mind. Why did we decide to live in this house before building a multi-generational home? My in-laws' house is much bigger, and they've been living there for years, so there really wasn't any need for us to move in together. How much time are you gonna take? Honestly, thinking about our future living together, this isn't a great start. Once I finished tidying up and thought of taking a short break, my in-laws didn't allow me even that. Fetch this, by that, they treated me like some sort of housemaid. I decided it was about time and broke the news to my in-laws. Bob asked me for a divorce earlier, so I'm getting divorced. What? Catherine, what are you saying out of the blue?
That's right. You are here to work for us.
I've already made up my mind. I quickly packed my things and prepared to leave. My in-laws' faces were obviously shocked. If you do that, you don't know what will happen. Oh, Bob won't keep quiet either. I was the one told by Bob himself that if I didn't like it, we should get divorced. There's nothing wrong with it.
How dare you, being just the wife?
The resentment from my in-laws was palpable, but I wasn't scared or anything. By the way, thinking Bob can support both of you, I don't think it's feasible.
What do you mean by that?
Why don't you ask him directly? They seemed to be screaming about something afterward, but I ignored them and left. I thought of returning home, but given the distance, I decided to check into a nearby hotel. Then, I made a call. Sorry to disturb your day off. I have something to discuss. Hey, long time no see. What's up? It's about Bob. I told the boss everything about his actions up to now. I see.
So that's what it was about. Did you notice anything unusual? Well, I've had my suspicions about him for a while now.
According to the boss, Bob had been on the company's radar. Well, with the way he's been behaving, it's no surprise.
Also, I have photos of Bob lying and going to the casino. I'll send them to you later.
That would help. But are you sure about this?
Yes. I'm planning on divorcing Bob. I can't take it any longer.
I see. With all he's done, he probably won't last long at this company anyway. I left everything in the hands of the boss and enjoyed some time to myself. During this time, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from Bob, so I turned it off. It was Saturday, he was gonna be in for a surprise when he'd work on Monday. I wish I could see Bob's face. Then Monday came.
What did you do?
I turned on my phone to find over 100 missed calls from Bob. Excitedly, I answered. So he sounded pretty panicked. Who knows? It's just comeuppance for everything you've done so far. I responded that way to Bob. Then, Bob became furious. Well, I saw this coming.
I got told I'm fired when I went to the company. It must be something you did.
I let out a deep sigh. Even if I hadn't intervened, he probably would have been fired at some point. I just expedited the process.
So, the company knew about everything you've been up to, didn't they?
That's not possible. I made sure it was hidden well. Bob seemed really flustered.
Well, whatever happens to you is none of my business.
Huh?
You think I'm gonna be the one in trouble if you get fired?
Bob seems to have forgotten what he said. My in-laws must have told him.
Why would I be bothered? We're getting a divorce, after all.
Bob went silent, seemingly stunned. Did he actually think I wouldn't go through with the divorce? If so, he's truly a clueless man. I'm utterly dumbfounded.
You're serious about that?
Of course. Who'd want to be with someone who jokes about such a thing?
It was just a slip of the tongue.
And why would anyone want to live with your parents who are drowning in debt?
What are you talking about?
Apparently, my in-laws hadn't told him. I used my weekend to gather information about my in-laws. I just had to know the real reason they wanted to live with us. Fortunately, my in-laws' house was just a 15-minute train ride away, so I decided to pay them a visit. The reason my in-laws agreed to move in with us in the first place was that they no longer had a home to live in.
I did my homework, Bob.
Even talked to the neighbors.
Who'd have thought that gambling would lead them to lose their house?
They're both losers. It's crazy, but both of my in-laws had gambling addictions. They poured money into things like casino and racked up debts, even using their house as collateral. They had to sell it in the end. Them coming to our place was just a temporary solution until their new house was built. You.
What about you?
Faking illness to go gambling?
You knew about that?
Well, even if you hid it, it doesn't matter now. I've got pictures, just so you know.
You're meddling too much. Where are you now?
You think I'm gonna tell you? Bob seemed too emotional, almost irrational. I thought this would be a good time to speak my mind.
Spit it out already!
Instead of that, why not tell your parents the truth?
What truth are you talking about?
About your salary.
What if they knew you're only making $3,500?
Basically admitting you're incompetent. I must admit, I'm proud of myself for holding up this long. And to top it off, Bob was using that money he earned on gambling.
You both have secrets, don't you?
Maybe it's best to get it all out now.
Shut up! I was gonna tell them eventually.
You don't have to lie, you know. I chuckled, mocking Bob. Looks like the tables have turned. He's probably getting what he deserves for always looking down on me.
After all you've done, you think it won't come back to bite you? Remember, you're just a homemaker. The one who's gonna suffer is you.
I don't know about that. To me, it just sounds like the whining of a sore loser.
How did it come to this?
Who knows? I'm tired. Later. With that, I hung up. And then headed out to meet a lawyer who assists divorce. Divorcing him was only part of my revenge. Bob and his kind are gonna suffer even more from here on out. Later, I got a divorce. As expected, I received a call from Bob.
I have debts to pay. What am I supposed to do?
Seems like after losing his job, he made the dumb decision to live off of loans. His parents are struggling with debt, and he can't even see that? What a pitiful man. That sounds tough. But you gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm cheering for you.
Don't you feel even a bit of responsibility to help your ex-husband? Why would I? We're strangers now. You. If I'd stayed humble, you'd take advantage, wouldn't you? Trying to intimidate me now doesn't make any sense, you know?
I said, laughing, before hanging up. Afterwards, it seems Bob decided to cut ties with his parents. Moreover, his parents weren't aware of Bob's salary situation. Apparently, they had a falling out over it and decided to part ways. Well, either way, a bright future for them doesn't seem likely. On my end.
You've had it tough recently, huh?
No, thank you for all your help during that time.
Well, I wanted to ask, would you consider coming back to work with us? We're short-staffed right now. I'd be really grateful, are you sure?
Of course. It'd help us out too. And so, I found a job, and my new life is going smoothly. My savings, which my ex-husband was after, are safe. From now on, I want to spend both my money and time for myself.
Enough already!
For a moment, I was about to retort. But, I held back those words.
How long are you gonna be away from home? The housework is piling up. Get back home already.
Maybe because I stayed silent, Bob went on ranting.
If you don't come back, I'm divorcing you. I don't need a wife who can't even handle house chores.
All I could do in response to Bob's harsh words was to sigh. He doesn't seem to get why I'm silent. It's too late for him to be trying to talk to me now. He should realize it's all because he ignored me. Well, if he had understood that, we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. Fine. If he doesn't get it, I'll make him understand. I never intended to forgive him anyway, so this is perfect. I'll teach him a proper lesson. I stared at Bob, snorted with a smirk, and then closed the front door. My name is Catherine Miller. About a year ago, I married my husband, Bob. When we got married, I was 30, so I had been with my maiden name, Thompson, for 30 years. That's why, at first, it felt a bit strange being called Mrs. Miller. But now, being addressed as Mrs. Miller feels more frustrating than strange. There's a reason I feel this way. You see, things haven't been going well with Bob. Hey, what do you want to eat tonight? I tried asking Bob at breakfast. But there was no response. He just glanced at me briefly and then went back to his smartphone. Sigh, he's not talking to me today either. Lately, Bob's been like this all the time. Even when I try to start a conversation, he doesn't respond or answer my important questions. It's because of this ongoing situation that every time I'm called Mrs. Miller, I'm sharply reminded of our marriage and it frustrates me. I can't take this lifestyle much longer. I've been thinking that more and more. Of course, Bob wasn't always this reserved. He used to be kind and cheerful. I first met Bob during his company's corporate trip. I was working for a travel agency at the time, serving as the tour guide for his company outing. That's when we crossed paths. Bob was having a great time with his colleagues. Moreover, he was considerate towards me, their tour guide.
Would you like to join us?
I'm sorry, I'm on duty right now. Being a guide for a middle or high school field trip often means paying close attention to many details. But in this case, the group was all adults. Nobody was being problematic or hard to manage. Still, it wouldn't have been professional for me to just ditch my responsibilities and have fun with the group. In the end, I declined Bob's invitation and focused on my job. I wondered later if I had made a mistake. However, at the end of the tour, Bob told me this.
How about we go out sometime? I'd love to see more of your smile.
It took me by surprise. Being a guide, you do get approached often. But nobody had ever been this earnest with me before. Alright, let's just exchange contact information for now. I was so thrilled, that was the best response I could muster. We exchanged numbers with my heart racing like a schoolgirl. After that, we started communicating more and eventually started dating. And that led to our marriage a year ago. Looking back now, I feel our days before marriage might have been better. Once we got married, I began to see sides of him I didn't like.
You left your clothes out again.
Huh? What are you talking about? Bob replied, playing dumb. I picked up the suit he'd left on the sofa.
This, Bob. Don't leave it on the sofa. Put it in the closet. Oh, that. My bad.
He responded with a chuckle. It just infuriated me even more. He's just like a child. Leaves his clothes everywhere, drops his stuff around the house, and no matter how many times I point it out, Bob just apologizes on the spot. And does the same thing the next day. And it felt like it was getting worse day by day. After our marriage, these irritating habits of Bob became more and more noticeable. Apparently, Bob felt the same about some of my habits. One late night when I returned home after work, he yelled at me.
Catherine, there's a pile of laundry. Aren't you washing anything?
Yeah, sorry. I'll get to it right away. It's our peak season, and I've been swamped at work. It was during the spring break, and our travel agency was in the middle of its busiest period. There were many trip bookings, and the workload had increased. It's the most lucrative time for a travel agency. So yes, I had been neglecting the housework. I felt bad about it. But I explained to Bob that this was only temporary and things would settle down soon.
Just making excuses to be lazy.
It's not an excuse. Your company has busy seasons too, right?
So what? If it interferes with the housework, maybe you should just quit your job. You're my wife, after all.
Bob said condescendingly. At that moment, I was infuriated. I couldn't help but raise my voice in response.
What's that supposed to mean? I work too. Shouldn't you be helping with the housework? Why should I do housework? Isn't that the wife's job? We're both working, so we should both pitch in, right? Don't you get it?
I confronted Bob, but he just turned away. Then, in a sulking tone, he said,
House chores have always been the wife's job, haven't they? You knew that before we got married. Things have changed. Couples work together now.
Even though I said this, Bob acted as if he hadn't heard. Eventually, our argument escalated and we slowly stopped talking. A few days later, when I came home, I heard Bob's voice from inside the house. Huh? Is someone over? I cautiously entered the living room and met eyes with my mother-in-law in the kitchen. Oh, welcome back.
Hi, why are you here?
Well, she sighed before continuing. The story dated back a few hours. As she was preparing dinner, Bob had suddenly called her.
Mom, I need your help. Catherine won't do any housework.
What? Catherine?
She keeps saying it's her busy season, so she's slacking off. I can't even get a decent meal.
He apparently said. Of course, that was a big lie. Sure, because it's a busy season, I might not be on top of all the chores. I might do laundry for 2 days in one go. But I do prepare meals and handle the basic chores. So, I defended myself confidently. I sometimes use meal kits, but I still cook the meals myself. Bob interrupted.
What's a meal kit? Sounds like a shortcut to me.
I might have prepped ingredients, but I still cook everything from scratch.
It's still cutting corners.
Bob raised his voice, and his mother stepped in between us. After calming Bob down, she turned to me and said,
Anyway, it seems you have been struggling, so I came to help with the chores.
I see, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. I bet Bob's just exaggerating.
She glanced at Bob, who looked away, clearly unhappy. She then smiled warmly at me. Bob's been complaining, so I'll help with chores during your busy season.
But
It's okay. Just let me know what you'd like help with. With that said, Bob started devouring the food on the table. Soon after finishing, he promptly retreated to his room. Watching his retreating figure, the mother-in-law turned to me and said,
I'm sorry, Catherine.
What? Why?
About Bob. He's probably not doing much around the house, is he?
All I could do was give a wry smile when my mother-in-law said that. Seeming to understand my feelings, she continued.
Bob probably called me over just to spite you.
To spite me? As I asked for clarification, she sighed before answering. From her perspective, Bob was frustrated with me for cutting corners with the chores while ignoring his own flaws. To get back at me, he probably called her over, thinking that if she came, I'd have no choice but to do the housework properly. No matter how busy I was, I wouldn't be able to slack off. Moreover, she would surely scold me for not doing enough. That's what she guessed Bob was thinking. But contrary to his expectations, my mother-in-law showed understanding towards me. Not only that, she actually blamed Bob. This didn't sit well with Bob at all. That's why Bob's been sulking, she said.
But what should I?
Just leave him be. He's not a child. She laughed off the matter. But things wouldn't be so easy. Because from that day onwards, Bob stopped talking to me altogether. He wouldn't reply, no matter what I said. He'd even turn away from me. At first, I thought he'd give up soon. But no matter how much time passed, Bob didn't seem to want to speak. And like that, days turned into more days. Eventually a week passed, and before I knew it, half a year had gone by. By that time, I had truly reached my limit. This isn't a marriage anymore, is it? Feeling this way, I decided to file for divorce. After work, I went to a lawyer's office. Then, on a particular weekend morning, I left the divorce attorney's business card on the table and went back to my parents' house. To say I held no grudge against Bob would be a lie. But I didn't want revenge or anything like that. If I got some alimony, that would be fine. That's what I thought. But shortly after, an event occurred that completely flipped my emotions upside down. It happened a week after I left the house. In the middle of the day on a weekend, someone unexpectedly came visiting. I'll get it. Holding back my father who was next to me, I stood up and headed towards the front door. May I help you? I called out to the silhouette standing in front of the entrance. But there was no reply. Wondering who it could be, I opened the door slightly. The moment I peeked outside, I was taken aback. Bob? It was Bob standing there. He was looking intently at me, his mouth a tight line. I immediately shut my mouth. Suddenly, Bob raised his voice.
What are you doing here?
I was stunned by his outburst. Why is Bob angry? After all the silent treatment, I'm the one who should be mad. Such feelings overflowed within me. And at the same time, anger swelled up. Oh, doesn't Bob realize I'm mad? Well, if he doesn't, I'll make him understand. I decided to express my anger silently.
Enough already!
For a moment, I almost retorted. But I held back those words.
How long are you gonna stay away? The house is a mess, just come back already.
Since I kept quiet, Bob continued his tirade.
If you won't come back, let's just get divorced. I don't need a wife who can't even do household chores.
All I could do was sigh at Bob's harsh words. He doesn't even realize why I'm silent. It's too late to talk to me now. Realize that all of this is because you ignored me. Well, if he had realized it, we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. It's fine, I'll make him understand. I never intended to forgive him anyway. I'll make sure he pays for his mistakes. After glaring at Bob, I snorted in derision and shut the door.
Hey, Catherine! Don't ignore me!
Bob tried to forcefully open the door. I held the door firmly, staying silent.
Stop kidding around! Come back now!
It was when Bob said that. Noticing the commotion, my father rushed out from the living room. What's going on, Catherine? Dad, please help. I whispered, asking for his help. My father took my place and confronted Bob outside. What do you want? Bob flinched at my father's stern tone. Soon, Bob started to look evasive and began making excuses. Catherine hasn't come home, and she left all the chores behind, so.
I've heard all about it. This is your fault, isn't it?
No, I didn't really. Bob looked more flustered. My father, pushing him into a corner, told him.
You haven't been talking to Catherine, have you? And you came to pick her up? How can you even say that?
Well,
by not talking to her, you essentially gave up on your relationship. It's too late for regrets now.
Bob jumped at my father's booming voice. Bob quickly distanced himself from my father and pointed at me.
I'll forgive you now. At your age, you won't have many chances left after a divorce.
All bark and no bite. That's the phrase that came to mind. He looked that pathetic. I sighed and retreated further inside the house.
You'll regret this,
Bob shouted. It was so loud I could hear him clearly inside. Shortly after, my father returned. I asked him about Bob. Where's Bob? He ran off. So, what are you gonna do? I initially planned to leave him be, but I've changed my mind. I'll teach him a lesson and make him truly regret it. I was determined. I was about to contact a lawyer when my phone rang. Huh?
A call from Bob?
I guess he switched to calling since I ignored him. However, my intention to not talk to him remained. I ignored the call. It ended shortly after. He seems to have given up. Just as I murmured that, the phone rang again. And after that, the calls just wouldn't stop coming in. So persistent. I might as well block him. I blocked Bob's number. I knew he'd figure it out soon, but I didn't care. If he gets the message that I want to ignore him forever, that's enough. That's what I thought. After that, I don't know if Bob realized he was blocked. But he didn't come to the house. And for that, I was relieved. And the next day, I went to work as usual. On the way home, I figured I'd stop by the lawyer's office. I'll discuss the next steps with them. That's what I was thinking while working. Lunch break rolled around, and I stepped out of the office to grab a bite. As I was heading out, a voice called out to me.
Catherine! I've been waiting for you!
Turning toward the voice, it was Bob. I was taken aback and blurted out. Why are you here, Bob? Catherine, why haven't you come back? You don't answer calls, what the hell are you thinking? Bob ranted loudly, drawing attention. I got flustered.
Hey, don't make a scene here. You ignore me in person and over the phone. What choice do I have?
He raised his voice, clearly agitated. By now, I was getting really annoyed. All he ever thinks about is himself. Even though this whole mess started because he decided to give me the cold shoulder, I wonder how I could get through to him. Just as I was pondering this, a colleague named Paul emerged from the office. Paul is a male coworker. He's been hitting the gym, and it shows. Noticing the commotion between Bob and me, he stepped in. Is everything okay? Paul asked, concerned. I managed a rueful smile, replying. It's a little complicated. But from the look of it, Paul seemed to get the gist. He stared at Bob and said, Do you have business with one of our employees?
Mind your own business. This is between a husband and wife.
Husband and wife, huh? Paul gave me a quick glance. I shook my head. Suddenly, Bob yelled.
Catherine! Stop lying! We're married, aren't we?
No, we're not. We're complete strangers. I snapped back. His face turned beet red with anger.
That's a lie! We got married a year ago, and we've been living together ever since.
Bob began his rant, looking all high and mighty. I was looking at him with disbelief. Waiting for him to finish, I finally interrupted. Done with your tall tale?
What? It's not made up.
Well, where's the punchline about us being divorced? Bob looked stunned at my remark. Seeing his expression, I teasingly said,
"Oh, did you forget that you signed the divorce papers from my attorney?"
"What are you talking about? I didn't sign anything."
"You did. It was on the papers my lawyer sent,"
I said in a slightly lower voice.
"What are you saying?"
Bob asked in disbelief, so I began to recount the events after leaving our home. The day after I left our home, divorce papers were sent to Bob. Bob might sign it, or he might not. Either way, I thought it was fine. But a few days later, there was a twist. My mother-in-law visited me. Apparently, Bob had asked her to handle the household chores in my absence. She urgently asked about the legal papers. When I told her how Bob had been ignoring me, she became furious. Then, she pulled out the divorce papers.
"He did something terrible, but he did sign these,"
she said, urging me to submit them right away. And so, with my lawyer's assistance, the divorce was finalized. And just like that, we were officially divorced. Hearing all this, Bob looked bitter.
"I never wanted a divorce." "Then why did you sign the papers?" "I was drunk when I did."
Bob started making excuses.
"I was drunk and just signed it for fun. I never really intended to divorce. It was just a game."
He went on with his excuses.
"But once you signed the divorce papers, there's no way those excuses will fly. You really expect anyone to believe that?" "But Shut it. We're already divorced. If you say one more thing, I'll call the police."
I snapped at him. Bob looked down, biting his lip like a child.
"Just go away,"
I told him off. Bob turned his back, murmuring, "You'll regret this."
"That's my line."
Bob then scurried away. Surely, he's learned his lesson by now. We're officially divorced, and he's the one who signed the papers. He can't object now. I couldn't help but laugh. Later, I thanked Paul by inviting him for lunch. We had an unexpectedly great conversation. After work, I headed to the attorney's office. But then a problem surfaced. Bob might not agree to discuss it. "We'll do everything we can," the female lawyer reassured me. "But if Bob tries to approach me again, it'll be a nightmare." I emphasized this to the attorney. My job was done. All I had to do now was trust the attorney. I headed home, relieved. But days went by without any contact from the lawyer's office. Instead, something else arrived at my place. It was about 10 days after visiting the attorney, when my distraught father approached me. "Something strange was sent to you." He handed me an envelope. It read personal identification notification. "What's this?" I opened it, and my face turned pale.
"A marriage application."
I immediately called the attorney, explaining the situation. "It means someone submitted a marriage application without your consent. Typically, both parties go to the county clerk order's office to submit a marriage application. But one person can submit it too. In that case, the local authority notifies the absent party. That's the personal identification notification. This is to ensure that the marriage application isn't submitted without the other's knowledge. There's only one person who'd do this. It has to be Bob." Infuriated, I reported the matter to the police through my attorney and sought advice. If you file for a marriage annulment mediation, it seems like a hassle, but it's the only way. I had the lawyer start on it immediately. At the same time, I reached out to my mother-in-law, thinking it'd be pointless to contact Bob.
"Well, the thing is,"
I explained everything to her, and as expected, she was livid.
"Bob, get over here."
I could hear her yelling at him over the phone, followed by Bob's crying.
"It wasn't what you think. I did it for Catherine." "What are you on about? What you did is a crime. You realize that?" "But
He began to wail pathetically. It was unbearable to hear, so I hung up. The next day, led by his mother, Bob showed up at the attorney's office. As soon as he entered the office, he immediately apologized.
"I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
Excuse me? There's no way I'm forgiving this.
But I did it for Catherine.
He started with the same excuse. So I told him. Submitting a fake marriage registration can be considered forging an official document, you know. Of course, that's just a possibility. It's uncertain if he'd actually be charged with a crime. But as a threat, it worked wonders. Bob apologized again.
I'm sorry. Please. I don't want to go to jail.
Too bad. Reflect on what you did. With that, Bob broke down in tears. Later on, in court, Bob confessed to forging the marriage certificate. I assume he testified that way hoping to get leniency. However, life isn't that easy. Although he wasn't prosecuted, it didn't change the fact that he committed a crime. In the end, Bob lost his job and became an outcast in the community. Whenever people saw him in public, they whispered behind his back. Unable to take the ostracism, he moved to a small town. Now, he's scraping by, working part-time in a warehouse. While I'm not ready to think about remarrying, I do want a fulfilling personal life. Things with Paul are looking pretty good, to be honest. If and when I feel ready to move on from the divorce, I'll think positively about it.